cars are sitting in garages or worse, junkyards, kind of decaying away. That would be a shame, but I don't know how. I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. The 1,500 of these cars are made. 1,555, I think is the exact number. And I'm really not sure that would really be the case. I'm sure a lot of these people bought these cars as an investment back in the time, or a collector's item and an investment. I really don't know if that really panned out for people. Like this car, it's got 4,500 miles on it when I picked it up. And so obviously somebody bought it for an investment. I'm not sure that actually worked out for them, quite honestly, because I saw the purchase price of the car, and it was over $31,000. I didn't buy this car for much more over that. So you think about carrying cost over those years, and I can't think that was that sound of an investment. I do think the value of these cars are going up anyway. So I think what we do is bounce over to another subject first thing today, and go talk to my people over at the Paintless Dent repair facility. They do ceramic coatings for me, and they do a great job. I just wanted really to see if they could give us some tips from a consumer standpoint of what to look for when addressing ceramic coating, paintless dent repair, PPF, which I believe is the plastic coating and stuff like that you put on your cars, which I did to this car, by the way. It's got a white patent bumper. There wasn't a mar, a scratch, a dent, a thing, anything on it when I got it. And that was the first thing I did, was take it over and get a PPF put on the front of this car, so I didn't just ruin the paint from driving around, because again, I drive my cars. So we're going over there and talk to them. I also want to touch upon something that I missed on the RX-7 in the first episode, and we'll get to that. Well, thanks for being with me. I think what I'm going to do now is turn my radio on with my little 1980s, 1990 electric antenna. That's so cool. We'll see you in a bit. Cue the banjo. Hey, I'm with Jason here at American Dent Specialist. I've been bringing my cars into them for a little over a year now. I'm glad I found them. They've ceramic coated 2 of my cars, and they put in some plastic coating on the front of 1 of my cars. They take care of me when it comes to the beautification of my car. I wanted to take a break and have Jason explain to me, one, the finer details of the business, how they got into the business, what they actually do, and from my consumer standpoint, what can a consumer look at when considering a professional clear coat job and a professional dent repair, paintless dent repair, and also from a DIY perspective, what can a consumer look at and look for when wanting to do some of these coatings themselves. So Jason, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Like I said, I really like your business. I'm glad I found you guys. Maybe you can explain to me, how you got into this business and why you are where you are.
Sure. My name's Jason. I'm with American Dent Specialist, and I have been doing ceramic coatings and detailing vehicles around 10 years now. We specialize in PDR first, which is paintless dent repair. And then Andy and myself, which is the owner of American Dent Specialist, partnered about 1.5 years ago and opened up a detail side of his business. We are now Ceramic Pro certified installers here in Houston, and that's basically what we do is ceramic coatings, and then they do PDR down at the other shop.
Well, you do a great job, quite honestly. What can a consumer look at when looking at a professional? Because I know there's a lot of brands out there, and there's I wouldn't know, but I would call it fly-by-night organizations that come in and try to make some money on the ceramic coatings. And what should a consumer look for when they want a professional commercial coating on their car?
You want to look at a lot of things actually. Products that detailer is using, their methods of getting the paint right before applying the ceramic coating.
That's a great point.
And then also, and that goes, with ceramic coatings, it goes with PDR, it goes with PPF installation. You gotta have the paint right before you apply the ceramic, the PPF film, or
so
whatever.
It's like anything else on body work. You have to do all the labor-intensive prep work before you actually get to the fun part and put on all the glossy ceramic.
Correct. It's
Okay.
it's probably the most important step of all of it.
And we'll touch on that specifically on this car in a moment. Now, from a DIY perspective, say if a customer or an individual wants to apply their own ceramic coating, or maybe it's just a maintenance on their car, and they want a little bit higher than a wax job and better protection, on a longer lasting protection in their car. What are some of the things that you guys offer?
So Ceramic Pro offers a sport package, which is for, it's a consumer-based product. Anyone can use this product. And then I also have a Gloss Boss, which is a consumer-based product, just like Ceramic Pro is. It's about an 8-month to a year application. It's something that anyone can use. It's easy. It's a spray-on, wipe, buff off method. So it's a super easy product to use. And then when you maintain the vehicle and wash the vehicle, you would want to wash it with a high-end product like Gloss Boss Stay Glassy, which is a ceramic infused soap. It actually adds to your ceramic coating that you already have on your vehicle instead of taking away from that coating.
I love that stuff, quite honestly. That works great when you're washing your cars and the maintenance of it. I'll have to try some of that as well. Now, back on this particular vehicle, and Jason was talking about the buff on the car and the prep and so forth. I have the exact issue on this vehicle. I had hired somebody to do some paintless dent repair on the hood of this car. One of those individuals that come over to your house and they do that. And to his credit, he did get the dent out, but he also used a suction cup to apply a light for refraction and reflection to get the dent out. And I didn't notice it at the time, but that suction cup left a ring that I tried buffing out later, but I did not have the correct tools or the correct product to get it out. And I kind of threw my hands up in the air. This was several years ago. And then I had the car covered in plastic. PPF, is that what that's called?
PPF,
yeah. And so it's kind of there. If I wanted to get it removed, because I know you've stated it's not permanent, but you have to do it right.
For sure, and these are the things that you run into when you look to get your vehicle ceramic coated, PPF installed on it, PDR done on it. You really want to do your research and find the reputable shop that has a 5-star or close to it reviews. So, and then on top of that, the consumer being informed helps greatly. So do your research, guys, before you go out and you get this done. Because
I've noticed when I've always come over and watched you and others work on dentless paint repair and all the ceramic coatings, you have these huge lights that are on stands that get the refraction just right. I've rarely ever seen a suction cup on a car. If it is, it's a big electronic one that just holds enough pressure on it to keep the light on, but really doesn't do anything to mar the clear coat. And part of the clear coat, as I understand it, is clear coat is not as, if they don't get the hardness right on the clear coat, or if it's a fresh paint job, something like that, it's soft. And this can be, you can run into this more than when those situations than anything else. And I think maybe that's what I had. Maybe this hood was maybe painted before, and maybe not the right amount of hardness was not applied to the paint when it's doing that.
Another thing too is, when you're doing PDR or PPF, not only getting the paint correct and perfect before you lay down the PPF, or do your PDR. After you do the PDR, when you're using your knockdown tools or your toll cutting or whatever, you have to make sure you go back and you get that area that you worked on perfect before you lay down PPF or anything like that. And that's what we concentrate here at American Dent Specialist on getting the paint right before we apply anything, whatever it is we're applying.
So to kind of sum this up for the customers out there, if you're looking for some paintless dent repair, ceramic coating, the PPF and stuff like that, it's really the base work that's important before you start any of that stuff. And finding a reputable shop that concentrates and has that detail orientation to it is key. That's what I can recommend on that. And I appreciate, Jason, thank you very much for joining us today. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Very informative. Yep. And my viewers appreciate it as well.
One light shows defects on this vehicle, and this is considered a cool color or a white light. And these are around 6,000 K. That's the Kelvin temperature of the light. They show defects on this vehicle really well. On a white vehicle or a silver vehicle, this light might not show defects too well. So you have to have a light that you can change the color on, the Kelvin temperature, and that's what we use here at American Dent Specialist. We use a lot of scan grip products, which they're made for detailing and paint correction and paint matching paint on vehicles. So these lights, this is a headlamp, put it on like this, and you can change the color of the light to whatever color that you want, basically.
Okay. Whatever's best for the
color of the
application
vehicle
and tools you're going to be using in the color of the car.
Correct. So you know, along with using top of the line consumables and products to coat the vehicles, to prep the vehicles, and so forth, we carry that over into the tools that we use also.
So again, it seems to be all the base work that ends up resulting in a quality finish.
Correct.
So thanks once again to Jason for taking time out of his busy day. I actually just kind of walked in on him, and he was actually working on that truck when I came in. So he took some time out of his day to speak with us, and I really appreciate that. Two things I got from the conversation is quality of product and the detail that goes into the prep work. We actually tried to get a view of the suction cup ring that was on the RX-7 hood, but the human eye picks up things better than the camera does. It just does, and we really couldn't get the refraction right to pick it up on the camera, but it is there. Again, thanks for Jason. Speaking of the RX-7, there was something I wanted to touch upon that I didn't on the first episode. And I was totally remiss in talking about it, but in hindsight, I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because the video was getting kind of long. But I want to touch on it now, and I'm going to bring some stuff in. Give me a moment, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I had set some things up. If you joined us for the first episode, this looks very familiar to you. I talked about the different performance mods that we did on the RX-7 and the different mods that we did to the engine. I failed to mention one thing. We got 305 horsepower of that car out of the rear wheels, and a big part of that was the airflow through that engine. Airflow and fuel goes through these irons, which sandwich the rotor housings, and it goes through a tunnel into an opening into the rotor housing. We increased that porting and thus that airflow. We did it such to what's called an extend port or a street port. There's all kinds of different techniques or variations of these ports. You can go as mild and as aggressive as you want. The more aggressive you get on these portings, the less streetable that engine becomes. It revs great, but in town driving, street driving, the more aggressive those ports, the less streetable you go. So you really need to look at what are you going to use the motor for. If you're going to be driving on the street, I'm not sure why you would actually do a bridge port or a really aggressive port on there, other than sound and saying you did so. But it's going to be very difficult to drive on the road. The RX-7 has a street port. You really can't tell the difference on the exhaust note on a mild to moderate street port than you can from a stock engine. I'm going to go through some of the different ports in a schematic I've done. I haven't blown this engine apart, so I don't have a separate iron to show you on a realistic view or an actual view of the port. So what I did was I did a schematic over here, a little drawing. I'm no artist. It's probably not to scale. I know it's not to scale. But what you're looking at here is the face of this iron. Say it's this iron right here. And the rotor would be spinning in your orientation counterclockwise and my orientation clockwise. And this represents the port opening that I spoke of earlier. As air flows through this iron and goes into the rotor housing, this is the opening of the port. So what you do is you increase that port. The black shading is more of a stock port. The blue shading represents a street port or an extend port. And then the additional green shading over here is an example of a bridge port. The more you extend this porting and open this up, the more you overlap the intake function and the exhaust function. And that's where you get that blap, 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 blap sound. Again, I talked about streetability. The more you open this up, the more or less streetable you become. Now, why is it called a bridge port? This is the rotor face right here. Not excuse me, this is the iron face right here where the rotor sits up against. And this is the large opening, and this is a secondary opening. It's not two tunnels going through the port. It's all one tunnel. It's just another opening that you've created here. And then this is a continuation of the iron facing right here, this little bridge, hence the bridge port. And why is that there? Well, think about this. You have on this rotor, you have your apex seals, which ride up against the rotor housing. You have corner seals and you have side seals. If that bridge was not there, when this rotates, the corner seal would just fall into the port opening. The side seal would catch on the opening here and break. So you need that bridge there. I talked about this. The more airflow that you get through here, more fuel you get through here, the more heat you're going to create. And the more heat you create, the more counter actions you're going to have to do. Bigger intercoolers, bigger radiators, bigger oil coolers, larger exhaust. Get the heat out, control the heat going in. Larger intercoolers will control the heat going into the ports. Bigger radiators control the moderation of the cooling of the engine, and the same with the oil. A bigger exhaust, again, help it go out. What I found about my RX-7 is I'm on this tipping point. At 95 degrees, 93 degrees here in Houston, I start to get hot if I'm in traffic or do lots of pulls up to 7,000, 6,000 RPM. The engine starts to get hot. I turn the AC off. Remember, I like AC. I turn the AC off, the engine will cool down, and I can flog the crap out of the engine with the AC off. So I've created this situation. I like AC, but the AC is generating the just amount of heat to start getting it warm. This was exacerbated when I went up into altitude and I wanted to run my AC, but I didn't have very dense air against that radiator to help cool down the engine. I really don't think I'm going to do anything about this, quite honestly. I will just, in the summer months, I'll be moderate driving, or I'll just turn the AC off and just deal with the heat in the cabin. Also, during the winter months, summer or fall months and spring months, I don't have this problem. So I really don't know if I'm really going to do anything about it, but just live with it. Maybe look at some of the oiling, different oil, maybe add a different oil cooler or an additional oil cooler. But at this time, I'm just going to let it be. Now, I have a couple Scott tips on this car. One being the back latch. It's like the Cadillacs, that it's automatic. You hit a button inside the dash there, it raises up. You can then open up the hatch, and the hatch has been raised up by a motor inside here. Sometimes this doesn't fully cycle when you hit the button. It might stay down all the way. Then you raise your hood or your latch and you try to close it and it won't close. And you're thinking, oh crap, I have to get a new motor. Before you do that, basically, take your universal tool, your finger, and hit a little button down in the middle of this motor and latch. It will probably recycle. It'll probably go down a little bit and then raise all the way up to the top, right? Then try to shut the latch. That will probably be the fix. The motors are relatively inexpensive. I think they're even like 80 bucks on the internet. But try that first if you have one of these cars, or another 89 Trans Am, or Firebird that has this mechanism in it. Try that before you go out there and run and get a new motor. A second Scott tip I have for you has to do with the stereo and the steering wheel. Basically, if you ever have to disconnect the battery for service or to replace the battery, the stereo is going to lock, and it'll say so on display, locked. To unlock the stereo, you need the steering wheel controls, hit the mute button, and the stereo unlock. It's basically an anti-theft device. Obviously, if you take the stereo out of the car, it's going to disconnect from power source, it's going to lock it, and it should render the stereo useless because it's locked and you don't have the controls to unlock it. While I'm down here, don't ever rotate your tires. You have different offsets, as I was mentioned before, between the back wheels and the front wheels. And if you do get new tires and you go to a service place and get new tires for it, make sure they put the correct wheels on the back and the front. One more tip, and that is never ever have to replace the fuel pump. Well, if you have to, then you have to go through a lot of pain. But if your fuel pump fails, try something first. One, of course, check the relays. If you have a electrical probe, check the relays first, make sure it's not the fuel pump relay. That's a little obvious. What's not so obvious is the fuel pressure sensor that's attached to the oil filter housing. It's a safety feature in the event of a rollover or something like that. If the car doesn't sense any oil pressure, it turns off the fuel pump. Now, this happened to me, as I mentioned before, and I think it was stuck open, so the fuel pump wouldn't shut off. If it's shut closed, I might be getting this backwards, if shut closed, fuel pump will just turn off, right? So before you go through the pain of replacing a fuel pump, check those two items first. Obviously, go for the easy ones first, of course. Again, I'll show you real quick where that is. Down there, attached to the oil filter, is the oil pressure sending unit. So whatever tip I can give you about these cars, if you want to go fast, take your right foot, put it on that little long pedal down there, put it to the ground, then hold on. That never gets old. Well, that should do it for this episode. I did want to touch on a couple of things. If you joined us for the first episode, you noticed we had a cat, a new addition to the family. We don't have that cat anymore. We did find a good place for the cat, but we have this elderly cat, and those two weren't really playing off each other very well. Odd thing about it was, we took the cat into the vet, and it poked and prodded at the cat and handed it back to us, said, "Good cat." We took it to another place a couple days later to set up an appointment to get spayed. They looked at it for 10 seconds and said, "This cat's pregnant." Somebody's wrong there. But what do I know about cats? What I know about cats is everything I learned since I was 1 from this. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Cows, horses, you get the idea. My wife has horses, and she's forgotten more about horses than I will ever know. So when she tells me to do something with the horse, I do exactly what she told me to do, exactly how she told me to do it, because I don't like getting kicked. This seems a little odd, as I came from a small town, and we had a family farm, but by the time I got to the farm was dead. The orchards were gone, the cornfields were gone, even the gas well that they had drilled was capped in 2 weeks, so that we weren't going to be the Clampetts. But the farm is what got me interested and solidified my love of cars and anything mechanical. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of squirrel moment here and talk about another story, but I'll get back to how that farm did that. At the time, we had a 1976 Volare station wagon. Slant 6, crank windows, no AC, AM radio, posi traction rear end, 3-speed on the floor, and Sahara sand, tan. That's gotta be one of one, right? One day we all file in to go to Grandma's house in the Valari station wagon. My dad and brother in the front seat, me in the back seat, and my dad asked, "Everybody in?" Now, to my defense, I answered the question. I was in the car reading my book. What I hadn't done was shut the door. And our neighbor's 50-year-old oak tree was about this far from our driveway. My dad sticks the car in reverse and bends that door all the way to the front door. My brother looks out the side of what is now a double pane glass window for him, and then looks further back at me as to say, "It was nice knowing you, Scott. I'll speak of you fondly." Needless to say, my dad was pissed. They file out the driver's side of the car. I eject out of the crater-sized portal that I've just created long before my dad gets to the other side. Now, if I was smart, I would have reminded my dad about the driver's side fender that had been beaten in submission by a ball-peen hammer from some sort of parking lot incident. But I'm not, I'm a stupid kid. My dad starts to wedge himself in between the front door and the back door and push against its will back into the other side and tries to shut the door. With each attempt, my lifespan's getting shorter and shorter. He calmly steps back and goes, "You two, over here," and has us lean up against the door as hard as we can. So there, my brother and I are leaning up against the door like Gibraltar, and my dad scurries around the other side, grabs the seatbelt from the other side of the car, wraps it around the door handle, and clicks it into the receiver and says, "Let's go." So they file into the car, and I stand there like, what do I do? This is at the point my dad surely gives up any kind of higher education for me and has to announce to me, "Get in the other side, Scott." Oh. Off the side I go, right? Off to Grandma's house we go. Well, take another day. We all file in the Valari station, same Valari station wagon. And remember, the farm is dead. But my dad has an idea. He has an agenda. What I don't happen to notice is in the back of the Valari station wagon is a whole case of Fix-A-Flat, 10 gallons of gasoline, and tow straps. And we go out to the farm. My dad backs the Valari station wagon up to the barn and hooks the tow straps up to the family tractor. Remember the posi traction, and pulls the tractor out of the barn. He's going to make that tractor alive, one thing alive in the farm. Now at this point, I go off and I do my kid stuff, right? I'm in the old orchard trying to find berries, and I have the hand crank well and all this stuff like that. All the time this is happening, there's a symphony of two things. The clankety clank of wrenches, hidden bolts, and nuts, things coming off the tractor, things going back on the tractor, and a chorus of swear words from my father. Remember that movie, The Christmas Story? If you haven't seen it, by all means see it. There's a line in there about the kid's father working in swear words like other artists work in oils and paintings and stuff like that. That's my dad. And it's great. So this is all going on, and occasionally there is a, "Well, who designed this?" sworn out somewhere. And halfway through it all, the day, I hear this big clunk and clank, and my head pops up like a groundhog out of a hole. What was that? And I have to go find out. And I arrive at the tractor, and my dad's sitting on this tractor, and this tractor is fighting every bit of its existence. It is literally shaking its wheels off, right? My dad jumps off the tractor, grabs a screwdriver, and starts, I guess, tuning on the tractor. 2 or 3 minutes later, he's pretty much tuned or beaten that tractor in submission, and there is nothing but a small hum of chug, 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 chug from the tractor. I think it's awesome. My dad can fix anything at this point. Doors, tractors, you name it, he can fix everything. He also even attached this big arm onto the tractor, which I thought at the time was 40 feet long. It's probably 6, right? And it had these little teeth on it. And these teeth went like this. And that's what you lowered to cut the grass. And anybody's ankles and legs off that were in the way. OSHA was nowhere along to be found when they designed this tractor. My dad did the coolest thing ever he could do for 2 kids. The rest of the day, he gave tractor rides to those 2 boys, teaching them how to work the clutch and the gear shift and everything as he cut the grass at the farm. Who has memories like that? Well, I hope you do. I've got a couple ideas for the next episode. I hope you join me, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Who designed that? You know, I'm not that great at banjo, and I know that. I tolerate my stepdaughter shutting her door and putting her headphones on, and my wife turning up her TV. Even the neighbors screaming, learn to play the radio. But there's one thing that really hurts. The love of my life, my sweetheart, playing dead. That really hurts.